Hi and welcome back to my booktube channel. My name is Sam and today I've made a severe and continuous lapse in judgment because I've not been updating you on my monthly buddy read sci-fi reads for my Year of Sci-Fi. So yeah, my name is Sam. Welcome back to my booktube channel. We are going to correct my mistake because I've got sci-fi books to catch you up on, and I promised that I'd do them every month and I haven't. So yeah, sorry about that. Hopefully I'll get better from now on. But basically I am, if you don't know, or if you're new here, hi, welcome. I'm doing a kind of project for myself where I want to get more into sci-fi this year. So it's called My Year of Sci-Fi. I have a whole playlist about it. And I was alongside this doing a buddy read with two amazing people, Emily and Elizabeth. You can find them in the description. But I was doing a buddy read with them where we read a sci-fi book every month and then we chatted about it. And my whole plan was to do a video on each of these books at the month after I'd finished it. So the January one, I'd do a video in February and so on. I did not keep up with that because I got so bogged down in life. I was finishing up uni, doing my dissertation, then I graduated, then I was going abroad multiple times, and then I was looking for a job, and then I got a job, and yeah, we're here now in November, month 11, and I've done a total of 2 videos in this series of buddy read videos, and I feel terrible. And hopefully if we do this next year, I'm going to stay on top of this as much as I can. But in today's video, it's going to be a bit longer because I'm going to talk about each of the books that I missed. So the ones that I did do, the 2 that I did do were Douglas Adams' A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and that was January, so you can go check that out. And then I also did A Memory Called Empire by Arcady Maritime, is that the name? In July, I believe. So yeah, they're the 2 that I've done, so feel free to go watch those or stick around and hear about the books in this video. Anyway, I'll stop prolonging this intro. Leave a like, comment and subscribe. The books we'll be talking about today, I will do timestamps, so if you don't want to hear about a certain book but you do want to hear about a different one, feel free to skip around the video. I don't mind, as long as you support the video and like my content, then I'll be happy. But yeah, feel free to skip around if there's any that you don't want spoiled, because there will be spoilers in this video. But yeah, the books that I'll be talking about are The Combat Codes, which is by Alexander Darwin. That was February's book. Then we have The Chilling Effect by Valerie Valdez. This was the month after February, March, was that it? Sorry, I don't know my months. And then we have Ascension by Nicholas Binge. We have Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis, and we have Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes. So they're the 5 books that I'll be talking about in this video, so feel free to skip around if you want to hear a certain one and not the other. But yeah, you will notice there was only 5 there and we're on month 11, so there are a couple that we didn't get a chance to read. I'm currently halfway through our one from September. I'm still reading that, and the one from August none of us got around to, and the one from this month, well, I guess October, we haven't got to either. So we are all falling behind, which makes it feel like a group effort. But yeah, they're the 5 books I'm going to be talking about in this video. We're going to dive straight into, see if I picked up the right one. No, I didn't. This one, Combat Codes. We're going to be diving straight into this one. So yeah, let's get into Combat Codes. Let's go. Okay, so the first one is The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin. What a great name. I love the name Darwin. It's just so nice. But this was Emily's pick and this was our February read. And I have very mixed thoughts on this book. I think overall I did enjoy it. I think I gave it 4 stars, maybe 3.5, but I think it was 4 stars. I enjoyed it overall, but there were definitely parts where I thought it dragged, because this book basically follows a world in which martial arts are at the core of the society. Rather than wars and political disputes, they have fighting matches, and they have these people called grievers who represent the country as a whole, or they represent a specific group or a specific gang or whatever, and these grievers fight each other, and whoever wins, that country will get the resources or whatever they were fighting about. Now, this was, I would say, a sports book, because martial arts is a form of sport, and I hate sports. I hate sports. I find them so boring, and that held up in this book because the amount of times because obviously there's going to be a lot of fights and matches described in this book, I found them incredibly boring and repetitive. And that's just me. Like, they were well written, sure, but for me personally, every time a fight was described, I found it quite repetitive, because it's just like two guys punching each other, and I was just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever. But besides that, the world was very gripping and enthralling. It was very dark, and it was almost like you've been dropped into this really harsh reality, this harsh world, that we start in an underground city where there's fight dens and people are being held captive and forced to fight. And yeah, it's very grueling, very rainy and grainy, and yeah, it really establishes this harsh reality and kind of a world that would encompass martial arts at such a core kind of standing. I think it does a great job reflecting what that world would be like, because a world that values violence and bloodshed would be dark and gritty, because you'd have to have people that are willing to see that. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. But yeah, that's the opening thoughts. So in this book, we follow two characters. We follow Murray, who is kind of an ex-griever. He kind of aged out of the position, but also he kind of became disenfranchised with the cause, because the fighters are supposed to follow this code, which is kind of a system of honorability and the rules in which a fight is fair. And in recent years, Murray has seen that medical kind of intervention and kind of drugs, basically, like steroids. I was trying to think of what they were. Like kind of similar steroid kind of drugs have been used. People are breaking the codes, and he just did not want to be in that space anymore because it wasn't for him, and also he aged out of it. He's too old to fight. So we follow him, and we follow another character called Seago, who is this child who we initially see dropped into an underground in the underground city. He's dropped into a fight gang, and he is presumably blind. He keeps his eyes closed, and we initially see him fighting someone, and he wins, and it's this really cool moment. So he is taken in by this gang and is put with these other children who this gang forces to fight each other, because they want to eventually have some scouts from the grievers come and like take the kids and pay for them. So they're basically working these children in fight clubs, which is awful. And initially I thought that was really cool, that Seago was this blind character who'd been thrown into this world that so heavily relies on kind of keeping track of movements and being precise and kind of focusing on what the other character is doing, and to have him be blind and still be such a kind of really good fighter with this, I thought was really cool, and I thought we were going to break that down. And then it's revealed that Seago is just being blind for attention. That's a bit harsh of me to say, but basically is what happened. He was being blind because he wanted them to underestimate him, and kind of, which I guess in itself is smart, but I kind of found it as kind of like a cop-out. I thought a blind character would have been a much more interesting choice than this. And don't get me wrong, Seago is my favourite character in this book. I thought he was really cool. But yeah, so Seago wins this fight, and he impresses everyone, and he is inducted into this gang of children that are forced to fight each other, and they all kind of extradite him and kind of force him to the sidelines, because they don't want to lose their position as a potential new griever, or potentially be scouted. So they all push him to the side, and he is kind of the story of where the outsider has to slowly earn the trust of the people and kind of do subtle things that then make them trust them, and then they become like really popular in the group, and then they have the main rival. So it's basically that, and he works his way into this group, and he finds a new meaning. Now, a quick pit stop here. I also want to say that Seago is introduced as knowing the codes, and he is a really honourable fighter. Basically, Seago has this understanding of the codes, and throughout his time with this underground gang, he kind of teaches the other kids the codes, and this makes them better fighters. He will do anything to kind of help his fellow comrades and to kind of not just get himself out of this situation, but he doesn't think anyone should be in this situation, because of course they shouldn't. They're children. They should be forced to fight in rings in front of grown-ass men. But yeah, he's very much a boy's boy. He's trying to get them all out of there rather than focusing on himself. Seago has a weird knowledge of the codes, and we are told he was taught them by someone called the Farmer, and he had a brother, and it's very mysterious, and he kind of sees them in his dreams, and there's a lot of dream sequences in here of Seago being on an island that's very kind of juxtaposed to his current position in this underground, dark, grimy city. He dreams of an island where he fights on the beach and he sees the sea, and it's all idealistic as he slowly has his like the Karate Kid training montages. And yeah, it's a very mysterious. And another element of this story that is very mysterious is what Elizabeth called the squishies, which are these weird ethereal light creatures who dance around the rings of the fighting matches, and depending on their colour they have different effects on the fighters. And now I'm not going to pretend that I remember what each light means, because it has been 9 months since I read this book, but like the blue ones, for example, or whatever color it is, would enhance the anger of the fighters or would weaken the fighters. And I remember the black ones were the harshest one, or something, because it was to do with the stones around the ring caused these like squishies. And the black one was the harshest because I remember it comes up in one of the trials, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So that is kind of the establishing of this world, is this very harsh reality for Seago. And like I said, I would have preferred it if he was mine, but he wasn't. Anyway, so Murray comes to one of Seago's fights once Seago has established himself, and he is very impressed with Seago, because at this point Seago is still pretending to be blind, and he's like, oh my god, this kid's really cool. He might be able to be like my new apprentice, because Murray is part of this scheme of like old grievers having to bring in new blood. So he scouts Seago and he goes up to the gang leader and he goes, hey, I want Seago. And the gang leader's like, well, why would I give him to you? I could get more money from someone else. I'm not going to give you Seago. And he's like, well, I'll fight for it. And then this gang leader's like, you know what? You were like a really famous griever at one point. I'd love to see you fight. Let's see you fight, old man. And then we get this whole situation of Murray having to retrain and get his kind of fighting energy back in, and it's this whole situation. And Seago starts to get to know Murray and they train each other, and Seago manages to get out and we see a bit more of the underground city. But yeah, a good chunk of the start of this book is in the underground city, and it does get a bit repetitive as well. Like, not just the fights getting repetitive, but the world as well, because we are just stuck in this gritty thing. But I think it's done purposely, and it does fit the like story of like, we need to get out there, and it almost suffocates the reader. Like it's suffocating the characters. Like, we just want to see more of the world. We don't want to be stuck in this grimy underground city anymore. We want to see all these places that Murray's describing. We want to see the islands that Seago is seeing in his dreams. So it's very kind of interesting that the reader is suffocated in this place like the characters are. Okay, so I just want to pull out some specific characters from Seago's kind of gang, Seago's gang, the people that are within the kids that are a part of the gang. Anyway, I don't know how to describe them, but there's one called Doze and there's one called Knees, and they're kind of like the comic relief and the intelligent, like, you know, the side characters stereotypes, like smart one or the dumb one. That's them. And they're amazing. I love them. They're very cool. Murray takes Seago to the surface, and it's very sad with the goodbyes that he has to have with Doze and Knees. He thinks he's never going to see them again. He feels guilty for leaving them behind, but we are now on the surface and we are out of the underground pit. And basically Murray takes Seago to this training academy where grievers are trained in different stages, like a school. But before he can enter, he has to take trials. And when they are gathering all the what would be the name, like the people that are like scouted, the scouted people from all the other grievers, they're all brought in, and we see that Doze and Knees have both been scouted as well by other people, so we get a reunion with them very quickly, which is very cool. We also find out that one of the bigger rivals within the child fighting group is there. I can't remember his name, but he was really snide and horrible, and we don't like him. And we see all these new characters as well, but he's in the trials, and he has to do these trials called the Lyceum, or is that what the building's called? See, it's been 9 months. I probably should have done this after I read it, but he does this, and the trials are very interesting. I did like them. They focused on different aspects of fighting. So there was one, it was very like Divergent, the Divergent simulations, where there's one where he has to fight this impossible to beat person. There's one where he has to survive as long as he can in a black ring. Like I said, this black ring is like the big bad one. And it's very interesting, and it's all within his head. And we see the people commenting on like, wow, Seago's doing really good. Yeah, Seago does really great on the trials. He gets in, so does Days and Knees. They get sorted into teams and they're in the school and they're doing different fighting. And that basically sums up the plot. If I'm going to tell you now, we see kind of like a big fight towards the end. There's a tournament between Seago and the rival guy from the group, who I unfortunately can't remember the name of. And I can't be bothered, my neighbour's looking at me, who I can't remember the name of, unfortunately, but they have like this big trial, and Seago wins, obviously. Knees is like is on a different team at this point, so we're fighting to get Knees back. And yeah, it was like this big grand fight. But yeah, I think that's all I want to say about this book. I don't want to go into too much detail because this isn't supposed to be a plot breakdown kind of review. But yeah, that's kind of the main points. He wins the trial at the end. It's all great, but then it sets up that Seago was made. I think it was. He's not like a real human. He was made artificially by like a robot, which Murray uncovers, and the farmer was actually one of the higher ups in disguise who was trying to train. He was like a really good fighter, and he's trying to train a new batch of people. All I remember is vats of black goo, and them not being real people, and they were made bred specifically to be fighters. I kind of gave up with the idea of this trilogy. Like, I know Emily continued on with it, but I was like, I'm not going to read past this book. But why do I remember that? There was Emily, let me know in the comments below what happened at the end of this book, because there was like vials of black goo, and Seago was artificially made, and the memories that he was having weren't actually memories. They were like the training sims in his head, basically, where he'd learned the things. It was very weird. I think it was a good reveal, and I think it would make for a great trilogy. I think if I'd have continued, I would have maybe enjoyed it, but honestly, the fighting and the fight sequences were what put me off. I ended up just skimming them towards the end. Whenever there was like a fight, I would be like, okay, end of the fight. Okay, there we go. Because I just couldn't be bothered. I didn't care. Just punch each other off screen. Okay, anyway, but yeah, that is combat codes, everything that I remember, everything that I wrote down. I kind of stopped my notes towards the end. I swear I'd done them, but I don't think it's saved. But yeah, there are my thoughts on combat codes. I think overall it was a really lush world. It was very well crafted. It really immersed you from straight away. The characters were pretty cool. I think, again, like I previously said, I think they could have been cooler. I think if we'd actually seen a blind Seago, this book probably would have gripped me more. But yeah, I think overall it was a good book, and I would recommend it. It would be one that I would recommend. But personally, I don't think I'm going to continue with it, because it's not something that I necessarily need any more answers to than what I've got. I'm going to ask Emily to describe the rest of the series to me when she's finished it. Yeah, that's Combat Codes. That's the first book. I'm so sorry I didn't film this earlier, but there you go. There's my breakdown of Combat Codes. Let's move on to the Chilling Effects. Okay, so we have March's book, which is The Chilling Effects by Valerie Valdez. Now, won't lie, this is probably the one that I remember the least about, because I didn't enjoy it, which is really unfortunate, because I really wanted to enjoy this, because I don't know if you can see the cover, but look how beautiful that cover is, and there's cats on it, and this part of the premise of this book is there's psychic cats. How did I not like a book with psychic cats? Well, I didn't. So let's get into that. So I'm going to be referring to my notes, which are on my iPad here, a bit more on this one, because I don't really remember too many details about this one. But Chilling Effects basically takes place in outer space. And we follow Captain Eva, who has a kind of small cargo crew. They do different shipments, and when a shipment of psychic cats is rejected, they're just like stuck with a bunch of psychic cats running around the ship, which isn't utilized enough. Like, by the end of this book, you're like, wait, there were psychic cats? Because they are barely used, which is very annoying. And one of the reasons I didn't like it. Wasted psychic cats. But yeah, by the end, you kind of forget that. But yeah, she has a small crew of small crew, and they do kind of different cargo jobs. But then one day she gets a call from this like this really infamous space gang called The Fridge, which I just thought was kind of an anticlimactic name. Like, you want us to be scared of like an intergalactic gang called The Fridge. The Fridge, is that a Samsung fridge? Because yeah. But anyway, they are called The Fridge because they freeze people. How imaginative. Sorry, that sounded very bitchy. But yeah, they ring Captain Eva, and tell her that they kidnapped her sister and they've frozen her, and Eva can only get her back if she works for them for like to earn a certain amount of money. I can't remember why they targeted Eva specifically. I think there's something to do with her dad, maybe, or yeah, I can't really remember the specific reasons behind. But Ava is like, I'm gonna switch between Eva and Ava. I'm so sorry. I think it's Ava. Let me see. EVA, Ava, not Eva. I'm gonna go with Ava. So Ava is like, yeah, fine, I'll work for you. And we see her go on different kind of jobs for this gang, slowly building up the money, but it's just never enough for them. One of these missions entails kind of a pit stop at kind of like a petrol station kind of situation, a service station. And we see this kind of giant alien overlord kind of start flirting with Ava. And she's like, dude, you're being very creepy, like, please leave me alone. And because she rejected his advances, he acts like a typical alpha male dude and starts saying, well, I didn't want you anyway, I just want you to be my sex slave. And it's like, whoa, dude, you need to chill out and go home. And I think he chases Ava through the space station. It becomes this giant ruckus as he causes mayhem chasing her, and she manages to escape. And it's just like, this whole situation is just like, what the hell? Like, it was a really good comment on like the slimy kind of men that do that, kind of projecting onto this kind of space arena. I thought that was really cool. But yeah, that was a very interesting section. But yeah. That really sticks in my mind, that does. I remember that quite vividly. Well, again, I don't remember these books. Okay, now I'm going to refer to my notes because I'm forgetting anything else. So, I put, we see an alien emperor who destroys the space station. That's what I just made. He destroys the space station. That's what happens. He destroys the space station as she rejected advances. And but they manage to escape and run into this annoying ass space scientist fridge lab dude. He basically works for the gang. And we kind of get hints that the fridge is basically finding these artifacts from an ancient civilization that are very dangerous weapons. And if it's activated, it will also start terraforming in... Oh wait, anyway. Then we do another job with these parasites that are so creepy. Oh my god, yes, the parasites. This was actually my favourite part of the book, where they went to this kind of colony of like parasitic creatures that had taken over the like native people. And basically it was like a hive mind, and I love a hive mind story. I think they can be really cool. And we have a whole situation of like one of the gang gets kind of a parasite stuck on him, and then Ava's got to kind of be like, no, we can be friends, just stop like paralyzing my friends, like stop like being on his back, and we can be friends, and like I'll take you in space and stuff like that. And she basically kind of like chats up this parasite to kind of get it off her friend, and then they get out of there, and the parasite's still like, no. Yeah, I remember liking that part. Anyway, back to the notes. So I put, I'm loving it so far. It's giving Becky Chambers vibes. So Becky Chambers wrote A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which I think gave me the similar vibes to this, because it's very much like hopping from place to place, story from story. There's no like definitive plot. It's kind of just like loads of different stories kind of brought together for these characters. I put, it's fun, but the characters aren't sticking in my brain just yet, and I can't really see them and I couldn't find any fan art either to kind of help me kind of imagine them, and their names are like blurring together. The parasites were so cool and creepy. I wish they'd been a bigger part and a bigger threat. And the cats are adorable. They are so going to save the day, which I think they do. Like one of them does. Eventually find out the sister is actually fine, and was a double agent of the fridge, trying to secure these ancient artifacts before the fridge could get them. So she was working with the fridge to get the artifacts, but she was actually wanting to get the artifacts to stop the fridge getting them. It was very confusing. So Eva ends up getting frozen. frozen for years, which was very interesting dynamic because it kind of it was very abrupt. She got frozen and then she woke up and her crew had all like gone on with their lives and she had to kind of like get them back and like get new members of the gang. I remember it being very abrupt and I was like, oh, okay. So eventually they go to this place and meet a guy called Tim who's been trying to rescue a research crew stuck in a mine. There's an artifact in there, so Ava sticks around and tries to help him. Tim is a Reaper and turns out to be Vakar, who had been the love interest in the first half and then disappeared when she got frozen. He is revealed to be Vakar and they escape, but the fridge gets the artifact. The sister is really angry, so we all go and fight to try and get the artifact back and find portal guns and escape alive. Wow, what riveting notes I have. So yeah, this wasn't my favourite read, and for the most part I was just lost as to what was supposed to be happening and who the characters were supposed to be, and they didn't really feel that distinct and they just kind of blurred together. There was no chemistry between Vakar and Eva in my opinion. Wow, that's very bold, Sam. There was definitely potential, but for me personally, I just didn't feel anything between them, and it made the whole plot less climactic for me, as I honestly didn't care about finding Vakar. The twist with the sister was really cool, although she was super annoying with her refusal to take Eva seriously. That probably caused more issues than it prevented, lol. The cats were not as big in the plot as I had expected from the premise, but they were cute AF and I appreciate their inclusion, and that the characters thought about their safety, brackets, they dropped them off before the final battle. Sue was my favourite character, completely forgot who Sue is. I found her introduction funny and she was super fun, just a criminal on the run for accidental robbery of a vet and not so accidental robbery of some banks. Interesting to see where this series goes, but I'll do it purely on audio as I don't want to risk buying them only for them not to get better. 3 stars, verging on 4 depending on my hindsight and if the story sticks with me. So they're my notes. Sorry I just read at you there. But yeah, this book is one that didn't stick with me. In hindsight, I would say 3 stars, maybe even 2 stars at this point, because it is just not one that's kind of made any lasting impact. I'm not actually really enjoying talking about it. That's why I just read my bullet points out to you. But yeah, this is probably kind of the most kind of disappointing read of this kind of my Year of Sci-Fi project. I had this on my shelf and I was really excited for it because it had psychic cats and it didn't deliver, unfortunately. That's all I've got to say for this one. I'm sorry that was kind of like a droning on at you, but hopefully the next book will be better because the next book was incredible. So let's move on to Ascension by Nicholas Binge. Bye-bye, Chilling Effects by Valerie Valdez. Bye. So the next book that I want to talk about in this video is Ascension by Nicholas Binge. Now, if you do not know this book, then you need to get to know it because this was such a good book. It was freaking amazing. The quick kind of synopsis for this book is a mysterious mountain appears in the middle of the ocean and no one knows where it came from, no one knows what's at the top. So this group of scientists, including our main character Harry Turnmore, are kind of brought on, maybe against their will a little bit, to kind of uncover what is behind this mountain and why it is there, what's at the top. But the higher they climb, the more distorted and weird things become, and that is basically the premise. Harry Turnmore, we also have kind of a personal subplot because his ex-wife is on this kind of expedition as well, which is kind of coincidental, and we kind of uncover what went down between the two of them and why they are no longer together, alongside this bigger mystery of what is this mountain. So it's kind of this personal story mixed with this kind of mystery, kind of alien or really historic, or I don't want to give anything away, kind of mountain. So yeah, it's like this huge scale plot focused through this kind of small scale spot as well, and it's just it's such a freaking good book. And like this is like the very opening of the book, so it's not too much spoilers, but feel free to skip to the next book if you don't want to hear anything at all. But the cold open of this book is basically this man whose brother has been missing for 7 years. And then suddenly he gets kind of a message that his brother is actually in this facility out in the middle of nowhere. So this guy goes to go see his brother, who is not at all what he remembers. and he is really acting strange and eventually lights himself on fire. His brother burns himself alive right in front of him, and the only thing that he leaves behind is these letters to this man's daughter, the guy's niece, who he had never met, but he had written her a stack full of letters, and his brother, the guy that we are following's initial reaction is to publish them as a book, and that kind of twines into the narrative of this book. This book is almost like we are reading the guy's findings of the letters and everything that had happened. So it's very interesting kind of meta there as well. But yeah, that is the cold open, a man literally burning himself alive, and it is crazy. And we were all just like shocked, and we were like, yes, this is going to be a good book. And I can confirm it continues throughout the book. It is absolutely brilliant. It is brilliant. Anyway, let's get on to some spoilers for Ascension. So I want to start off with the kind of character drama between Harry and his ex-wife, because I just want to separate that from the mountain. So we basically, throughout the book, we kind of follow their tense relationship. They kind of start off very obviously justifiably angry at each other. We find out that he had abandoned her with their adopted son for seemingly no reason, until things start to kind of uncover, and we found out that the adopted son had died, and we're like, oh, because throughout the story it's kind of like, where is the son? Is he like still alive? Like, where is he? Why is she not with him? Why did he abandon him with him? Was there something wrong with the son? Did the son do something? And then it's revealed that the son had actually died, and it was Harry's fault. Like, not even like saying that in a malicious way, it was Harry's fault that the son had died, and this is why they they split up, and Harry just couldn't face what he'd done, so he just left. And yeah, it was heartbreaking. So we find out that this adopted son, I think, had been a patient at the hospital they were at, and they ended up adopting him or something. But the son was really scared of water, and one day Harry took him to the local river to teach him to swim, and all was going so well. It was a nice wholesome moment until Harry turns his back and the son drowns. However, this isn't the end for the son, because the son does survive being dragged under the water. They manage to resuscitate him, and all the passers-by are telling Harry to wait until the ambulance comes. It's going to be okay, the ambulance is coming, the son's going to be fine. But Harry just can't accept standing aside. He has to do something, and this ties into a later plot, but he tries to do some intervention with his son to try and keep him alive, and this is what ends up killing the son, because at the hospital the son dies, and the doctor's like, if you'd have just waited for the ambulance, your son would have lived. If you hadn't have intervened, your son would have survived, 100% would have survived. And it's like, oh my god, that's freaking heartbreaking. Like, it's sad enough, like, if the son had just drowned when he turned his back, but to have Harry's actions of trying to actually resuscitate his child being the thing that killed the child, so freaking heartbreaking. Bawling my eyes out at this moment. But yeah, that is kind of the big reveal surrounding the kind of character driven drama between Harry and his ex-wife, and they soon kind of, once Harry is able to kind of express how he felt and like what actually happened, and they kind of come together to kind of grieve, they do kind of rekindle their relationship a little bit there. And yeah, I just think it just shows that you have to talk about these things. You can't just hide your trauma, you have to share it. And I thought it was a really good message, and that ties into the ending of the book, because we'll get there in a minute, but this kind of idea of Harry letting someone else do something, standing aside, not always having to be the one that has to fix things, comes into play at the end, where he ultimately does what he couldn't for his son. Anyway, let's get back into the kind of the main plot of the mountain. The mountain, we slowly climb up it. Things start to get a bit weird. There's one instance where we're climbing up and we see another group on a ridge further away from us, and they all collapse. The mountain collapses on them and they disappear. But then when we go see if they're okay and who they were, there's nothing there. So there's like these weird instances of happening. People hear things that people haven't actually said, but they could swear that it was said. The time seems to be acting a little bit different on this mountain as well. And throughout the book, there's lots of kind of theories behind the mountain, and it was very much enjoyable to kind of pick and choose which ones we believed would be the answer, which ones we thought, no, that just can't be it. I remember particularly, I can't remember which way around it was, but me and Emily had theories about perhaps different kind of realities were coming together on this mountain. Like this was like a point where all the multiverses or whatever kind of touched, and that's why we were seeing multiple people, seemingly the same people, going up the mountain. There was also a theory that we had of maybe this is time dilation. They're seeing their past selves or their future selves. So we had the kind of ideas floating around in our group chat as well. But we also, there was a lot of ideas thrown around in the book itself. We have one particular Christian guy within the scientists group, and he has a really strong feeling that this is a really prominent religious mountain that has reoccurred throughout different religions, such as perhaps it's the mountain that Prometheus pushed the rock up, perhaps it is the mountain that Mount Olympus stood on, perhaps it is the mountain that Moses had to go over. So he draws all these connections between a mountain and religion, and that was kind of like an interesting kind of position to play that. I wasn't necessarily that into that theory. I didn't quite see that because obviously we had all these other weird things happening, and I was like, I don't really see how that would, why this would be happening if it was just a purely a religious mountain thing. But he really went off, and he was kind of crazy. But yeah, we had theories like that. We also started to find like weird kind of portals on the mountain as well, like not straight portals, but there would be parts of the mountains that connected, so you could go through one part of the mountain and then put a different one, then go through another one and end up somewhere else, and you could go in and out of them, and that was kind of strange. And they do get utilized when we find out that there are also Cthulhu monsters on this mountain, some weird kind of chanting weird aliens that also have like these weird murals and stuff that glow on the walls, and we're kind of like, are they a map? Like, is this speech? Like, what is this? And they're very creepy monsters, and we have some hijinks with those. But ultimately, when we get to the top of the mountain, all is revealed, and we kind of have lost our group throughout the trip to the top. They've been slowly dying off, but the Harry, the ex-wife, and this other kind of mean guy who's like all about showboating, and he really wants to be the one at the top and to be the lead of this huge uncovery. They make it to the top. I think they fight, and the ex-wife is injured and has to stay behind, and then Harry and the other guy race to the top of the mountain to see what was up there, and we find this fourth dimensional being. Like, I did not see this coming. I did not think we would be messing around with like fourth dimensions and different dimensional beings with ultimate power, but that's why we go, and they get to the top of the mountain, and there's a fourth dimensional being, and basically they are the creator of the mountain, and they created humanity as well, and the Cthulhu monsters were kind of their previous experiments that they'd made before they like created man. And they were very kind of into evolution, and they offer one of the two guys the next step in human evolution. We are not told what this kind of will entail. It's kind of this floating ball of light, and the fourth dimensional being is like, hey, one of you can have this and spread it to the rest of humanity, but you're going to have to fight for it, or you're going to have to choose between yourselves who gets it. And ultimately it ends up being the showboating guy is just kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna go get it, and he goes and gets it. And throughout this entire book, we've kind of been led to not like him because he's obviously very arrogant, very rude. But can you hear that? Someone's decided to cut the lawn. Okay, hopefully you can still hear me. I'm going to talk a little bit louder. But yeah, basically he gets the evolution, and he becomes kind of distorted and super strong and scary. But in a shock reveal, he shoots himself, and he says before, like he knew Harry wouldn't do this. He kind of didn't want, it's hard to explain, but he didn't want the evolution thing to happen also, so he shoots himself to avoid it being passed on, and also to spare Harry. And it's kind of this big reveal, selfless reveal of like, oh, he was actually kind of helping us all along. Anyway, the fourth dimensional being is so, this is so funny, but the fourth dimensional being was so frustrated by humanity and the lack of evolutionary drive that we had to kind of evolve and get stronger, that the fourth dimensional being was just like, you know what, I'm out of here, you guys are annoying. And he disappears, the mountain disappears, we're left falling down into the ocean, and we cut to black, and it's very much what the hell just happened. And we kind of circle back to that cold opening where we see Harry is in the home again, and it's kind of this kind of interstellar, like if you like this book, watch Interstellar, or if you like Interstellar, you'll like this book, even though I just kind of spoiled it all, but it's a very interstellar moment where it all kind of ties together, and Harry has to burn himself to kind of push the letters to be published. It was, I can't, it's obviously it's been a couple of months since I read this, and I can't quite remember how it all connected, but like it was like this circle moment, and it was really good. I really liked it. But yeah, throughout the letters, I think I already mentioned, I really loved how the book was essentially what the brother published about Harry and his letters, and we kind of see the letters, but we also kind of see the context formed around them, and also as we progress, you kind of see the slow kind of disintegration of our kind of concept of time, and we start losing track of things, and even the narrative is like, yeah, a couple of days have passed now, or like something happened in this time but we don't know. And I thought that was very cool as well. It was very immersive, but overall this book was fantastic. Very much enjoyed it. One of my favorites of the year. We're currently in November, and I can say it's still one of my favorites, and it would definitely be one that I would reread, because as you can tell already, I'm kind of forgetting things, so I think even on a reread it would be really cool. But yeah, that's all I have to say for Ascension. I think down to the next book, but that was Ascension by Nicholas Binge. I think I rated this 5 stars, so yeah, definitely recommend Ascension. This was really good, and I don't know how many times I'm going to say that, but this was really good, so check this out. Okay, into the next book. So the next book is The Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis. Now this one is a bit of a step down from the one I just talked about. I know that Emily and Elizabeth love this book, but for me, I just wasn't that big of a fan of this one, and this is actually my second Grace Curtis. I've read her other book, Frontier. I didn't like this one either. This one, to me, felt too much like video game cutscenes. Like it didn't really connect. It didn't really feel like a continuous story. It just felt like different cutscenes from a game. But that was my critique of Frontier. So when I bought this one, I didn't actually know it was Grace Curtis. I just saw the premise and the cover, and it was beautiful. And I was like, you know what, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go and see if I like it. And then I saw, after I'd already pre-ordered it, that it was Grace Curtis, and I was like, because I didn't like the previous one, and I didn't have any plans to read any more by her, but I did, and I definitely know I don't like her writing anymore. So The Floating Hotel, I kind of I should do the summary. So The Floating Hotel is basically kind of a whimsical murder mystery. I would like to liken it to Becky Chambers' writing, but I feel like that's disrespect to Becky Chambers. But yeah, it's kind of a whimsical murder mystery set on a floating hotel, spaceship kind of thing that drifts between different planets and planetoids. And yeah, we have to uncover who the murderer is. And I guess you could liken it to the Murder on the Orient Express as well. But yeah, I just wasn't a massive fan of this book. I read it in 2 sittings. The first sitting I read like 107 pages, and I did actually enjoy those pages. We started off with kind of a introduction to the hotel through the eyes of a child who does everything he can to get onto it, and he becomes a stowaway, but he is found, and then we jump 40 years and he is the manager, and they'd kind of accepted him into the hotel community, and he worked his way into the manager position. And I did like that whole section of like seeing the hotel through his eyes as a child, and then his eyes as a beloved patron is like the consumer though, isn't it? Like a beloved worker of this hotel. I really liked that section. There was a character, I think it was the chef character or something, was sent onto an asteroid community where he'd actually come from, and he was tasked with going to get some meat, but his family ran like a meat mafia thing, and they wanted him to stay, so they were kind of holding the meat hostage. But through kind of some rekindling of their relationships and kind of discussing why he didn't want to stay at home and why he needed to go on with the hotel, they reluctantly gave him the meat and just released him to live his own life, and I found that really wholesome. That was one of my favorite storylines, and this whole first 110 pages I did enjoy. I thought it was good, those two particular stories, because this is told kind of through a myriad of different POVs. We've got a bunch of different characters, and each kind of section is told from a different character. So those were two that I particularly enjoyed, and it was looking good for this book. I thought, oh, maybe I will like this one more than the other one. And then I kind of had a break from the book. I kind of had like a couple of weeks or something away from it. And then when I came back, I couldn't remember barely anything that had happened. I didn't remember any of the characters. I didn't remember what their dynamics were. And I just really struggled to get back into the book. But because it was a buddy read, I had to finish it, because obviously I had to be able to talk about it with Emily and Elizabeth. But when I finished it, I felt so drained. So I wish I'd left it at that first 100 pages. But yeah, the second half of the book, or my second half of the book, in terms of like where I carried on, I just didn't enjoy it. And even to this day, I do not remember what happened in this book. There was something to do with poems that were being passed around, and I found them quite boring. There was like two kind of like sunshine grumpy kind of relationship between two characters that were kind of put together to solve them. I don't really remember much more about the book. I also think the kind of setting of the floating hotel, this hotel that kind of drifts between systems in space, was not really utilized. I think it felt very much like just a normal spaceship. Like there was nothing particularly hotel-y about it. It didn't really feel like a hotel. Like I feel like it could have been more kind of enthralling, more like a hotel, you know? I don't really know how to explain it. Like Sweet Life of Zack and Cody in space. Like it should have been that kind of feeling, like, yeah, this is a hotel. This is like different to just a normal colony ship or a spaceship that we see in every other sci-fi book. But yeah, I didn't really like the setting either. I just don't think it was kind of explored enough, you know, or like shown enough. But I'm going off topic. So I think that was kind of brief, but overall I would say this was maybe a 2-star, maybe a 3-star read. I can't remember what I rated it. I think in hindsight I would rate it 2 stars, because I just don't remember anything about it other than what I've just told you. Yeah, the floating hotel wasn't my favorite. It's kind of a shame, because I have a really nice edition. Like it's got ombre, is that the right word, kind of edges, and then the under the dust jacket is this kind of really nice gold design, and it's signed, and I feel like a fraud owning this beautiful copy of a book that I ended up not liking. But yeah, that was the floating hotel. Not a massive fan, unfortunately, and that makes 2 Grace Curtis books that I wasn't a fan of. So yeah, let's get on to the final book that I'll be talking about in today's video. So the last book that I want to talk about in this video is Ghost Station by S.A. Barnes. Now this book was basically kind of a slow burn space thriller. It follows a psychiatrist who is forced to join a crew of people that kind of hate her as they go to a planet to kind of assess its kind of situation. And it was recently inhabited by aliens, and they are trying to kind of make it kind of a human colony. So they kind of have to assess how everything's going, making sure there's no kind of alien remnants left, or that the kind of atmosphere has not changed or anything. So that's their mission, just go check up on this planet. And then obviously things start to go wrong, because this is a horror, and horror things start to creep in and mysterious happenings start to happen. And we kind of see a therapist's reaction to all of this, which is a very interesting kind of viewpoint to go from Barnes's idea to kind of view these situations through an actual therapist rather than just an unlucky crew member. Was very interesting, and I'll give her that. But this book, to me, non-spoilery thoughts, was very slow. Like it was so incredibly slow. I think I was on like page 300, and I was wondering when something big was actually going to happen, because we'd been teased, and these kind of slow seeds of kind of mistrust and kind of mystery had been planted throughout the entire book, but it was just not enough to justify how slow the book was to me, because I wanted something to happen. I wanted kind of at least an altercation between the characters to happen, but it was just so slow. And I understand that it was kind of a suspense thriller, but yeah, I needed something to happen. And honestly, I probably would have DNF'd this if it hadn't been a buddy read with Emily and Elizabeth. I probably would have just DNF'd it. But I trekked through and I finished the book, so you're welcome. But yeah, my Nan's really thoughts was basically this was really slow, but it was okay. It was okay. If you're willing to sit through extensive dialogue, very similar interactions between all the characters, they didn't really have that many kind of variety in interactions. They all kind of just hated each other, or they all hated Ophelia, our main character at least. So there wasn't really any kind of differentiation between the interactions between the characters that made it interesting either. But yeah, that was kind of like my non-spoilery thoughts. So let's get into the spoilery thoughts of this book now. So in this book, we follow Ophelia Bray, who is kind of an outsider within her super mega corporate mafia rich conglomerate family, who all hate her because she does not abide by what they tell her to do. And thus they take the first opportunity to get Ophelia out of their way, because Ophelia is a psychiatrist, a therapist, and one day one of her patients just jumps out the window and she gets all over the headlines. She's kind of causing a bit of headache for her family, and they take the opportunity to get rid of her, and they kind of push her, or she pushes herself. I can't remember which way it was. I think she does it to get away from them, but it could also have been like pushed on her. I can't quite remember. But yeah, she ends up being part of this pilot scheme to send psychiatrists on spacefaring missions with crews to kind of heal the bone. If you can heal the bone straight away, why not heal the brain, is how they view it. And they think, oh, having a psychiatrist in the cruise, rather than having to wait for the cruise to get traumatized and then come back and talk to a psychiatrist, why don't we just put a psychiatrist with the cruise and they can talk about it whilst it's happening? So that's kind of the pilot scheme that she's forced onto. However, when she gets onto the crew, none of them want her there because they recently lost one of their crew members, and Ophelia was obviously here to kind of help them with that and kind of make sure things went well, but they didn't want the help, and they play this really horrible prank on her when she gets on the ship. Basically, she's in a cryopod and she wakes up, but neither of the other people have woken up, so she's like, oh shit, I've woken up too early. There's no way to get back in the pod. I'm gonna like live out my entire life whilst they're asleep trying to get on this mission, and I'm gonna die. And she's like really freaking out, and she's trying to pull open the other cryopods and trying to get them out, and then she thinks like she's killed one of them, and then the captain comes in and is like, guys, stop pranking her. And then they're like, oh, okay. And Ophelia's like, what the hell is happening? Like, why would you do this to me? This was a horrible prank. Like, even within the situation, she was like, they could be pranking me right now, but this would be a really horrible prank to play. And then it turns out it is a prank, and she's like, what the fuck? But yeah, that was like a really strong opening, and then it kind of just tottles along for another 100 pages. But yeah, she joins this crew. None of them like her there. So on this crew, we have a couple of members. We have the captain, Severin, Ethan Severin anyway, but we call him Severin for the first half, and he's the one that comes and rescues her from this kind of hazing from the other members, who are, we have Birch the bitch, I like to call him, because he's the most annoying guy ever, because he's just an asshole to Ophelia for no reason. Like, he takes it too far. He's just an asshole, and I call him Birch the bitch. We have him, we have Kate, who is kind of the second in command. She's very commanding. She also really doesn't like Ophelia. I mean, none of them like Ophelia, but like, she's kind of sharp-edged like Birch as well. We also have Suresh, who's just kind of there. He's kind of moody, kind of reserved to himself. He's like really buddy with Birch. And then we have Liana, who is kind of the younger one. She's more open to Ophelia being there, but she's kind of peer pressured into also not liking Ophelia by the others. But she is our port-in, so Ophelia does stick to Liana to try and worm her way into the group and try and get them to trust her and tell them things, because at the end of the day, she's there to be their therapist. She's there to kind of help them through trauma, because the group previously lost one of their crew members, Ava, who is kind of running mystery throughout the book of like what happened to Ava. So she's kind of there to help them with that, but also kind of support them on this mission to kind of check this terrestrial planet is still habitable. So yeah, none of them really want to talk to her, and she, throughout the entire book, we're just slowly seeing her get bullied by the crew. So yeah, it's kind of tedious at times, because I think it would have been better if like we had a character like Liana who was just accepting of Ophelia from the start, but with them all just hating her, it felt very much like all the interactions between these characters were very much the same. Like they all just hated Ophelia, and it was the same kind of like, we don't trust you, we don't like you, from every character. And it was just kind of annoying, and at times it did feel like we were never actually going to break that mold, because even towards the end, there's still not kind of that, there's still no kind of trust with Ophelia at the end either between the characters, or at least the ones that she did have die. But yeah, it's just kind of annoying, and that was one of the things that I found quite repetitive as well. Like, not only will we slowly teasing out the mystery, we're also repeating the same character interactions with each character, just with a different name. But yeah, we see that, and they go to this planet which is kind of half in sunlight, half in dark, and they go to kind of the habitable strip around the middle of the planet, which I thought was a really cool setting. When they get there, they found this uninhabited kind of facility from a previous group from, I think it was the rival company that was there, or was it their company? I can't remember. But it's abandoned, and there's no one there, and they started to find mysterious things like a really personal photo and a wedding ring and a comms tooth, which is a thing they have apparently, even though it's only ever that's we don't see them use it, but a comms tooth on the floor discarded, and they're like, why are these personal items just on the floor with a pile of rubbish? Like, what happened here? Where is everyone? The generators aren't working, the air's really stuffy, the place is a tip. So yeah, it's very much a mystery of like what happened to the previous people here as well. And we also see some kind of weird things happening to our own crew as well, because during Ophelia's kind of walk around the spaceship, she's still getting hazed by Birch the Bitch, who starts putting like fake bodies on the floor to kind of freak her out as well. And that was kind of annoying. But yeah, he is just making Ophelia question herself, and which isn't a good thing, because she's already having kind of dreams about her murderous father. So she had a father who did this really infamous bad thing where he went around and murdered a bunch of his crew members with an axe, and even tried to kill Ophelia, his daughter. So she's kind of hiding this from everyone. She has like a different name. She's like supposed to be Ophelia Beadlestow or something like that, but she's gone with Bray to kind of hide her identity from the crew, and that's again eventually gets uncovered, and they start to mistrust her even more when she does start to tell them, and they start to find out. There's a bit of dialogue that I want to say as well, because I just thought it was funny. But Ophelia is so good at reading people, because she's thinking about how she's going to approach Suresh and get him to have a kind of one-on-one with her, and she goes, that's what she wants to ask Suresh. With such anxious attachment issues, her immediate inclination would be mum. But the desperate need for approval and use of humour, even for negative reinforcement, just screams distant father. And I just found that so funny. Like, I read that and I have like a laugh to myself, because it was like, it's just read him. She read him. Like, she got it. But yeah, we get some more kind of mysterious interactions. We see Ophelia overhear Severin and Kate talking, and it's kind of weird because Severin's like, oh, Ava's not going to be an issue anymore. And I was initially like, wait, is Ava still alive? Did they do something to Ava? Like, is Ava on this planet and she's gonna like come out at some point? Maybe she's the one making these weird things happen, and like these shoes move and like leaving these photos around. Maybe she's doing all this. Like, what happened to Ava? Why is she not going to be an issue anymore? And that's kind of backed up when Birch, loser, goes missing, and they're all searching for him, and Kate insists on taking a gun with her. So it's kind of like, why is Kate getting a gun? Is she scared that he's gone AWOL like Ava? Like, maybe he's discovered something about Kate and Severin, and she's scared he's going to kind of reveal that, and that's why she wants to kill him first. And even Ophelia's like, what the hell? Why she got a gun? Like, I definitely need to find Birch before she does, because what if she shoots him? So yeah, it's very kind of mysterious. Like, something was up with Severin and Kate, because like, what was happening? But eventually we do learn that Ava had basically on a previous mission had gone against Severin's wishes. They had been like mining or like getting things from a mine, but the mine was unsafe. So after hours, Ava went back in the mine and Kate tried to stop her, but Ava ends up getting herself killed because she was trying to get an artifact to sell on the black market to fund the recovery of her ill daughter. So it ended up kind of being like an interesting explanation, but it kind of fell a bit flat for me. Like, I thought it was going to be more like ominous than that. I thought like Severin and Kate would have had a more explicit part within her death, but that wasn't it. That was just, she just got herself killed because she was trying to sell things on the black market. And that leads into kind of some unanswered questions that I have later in the story. But yeah, let's go on. So this is kind of a boring description of the book, but trust me, I'm trying to get just the interesting parts. But basically, we move on a little bit. We have a lot of talking, and then we see Ophelia go with Ethan, who is now kind of more bonding. Ethan is Severin, the captain, and they're bonding a little bit, kind of against their will. Like, Severin really doesn't want to like her, but he's kind of forced to like her, and they go on this expedition while the other ones kind of drill up some ice samples, and they go to the old ruins of the alien civilization, and they weirdly uncover something that the previous teams didn't, and they find a room full of piled up dead bodies, alien bodies, and all these bodies are kind of deformed and creepy, and we never really get explained what happened to them and why they were like piled up in kind of stacks of like dead bodies, but that really freaks them out, and they get out of there. And we then find out the other team, whilst they were drilling ice, accidentally drill into a dead body under the ice, and it's this horrific situation, and Liana, bless her little heart, is startled so much that she gets really traumatized, and yeah, starts to need Ophelia's therapist help. But yeah, they dig up a dead body, and just outside the base as well, like this dead body is outside of the base for some reason. Why didn't they bring the dead body back into the base and like burn it? Why did they just leave the body out? Did they push the body out? Did they know the body? Like, the mysteries start to pile up. So the first big event finally happens about 250 pages into the book, where Birch the bitch finally fucking dies, and he had been experiencing like weird kind of, obviously he went missing, and he'd been in like the airlock thinking he saw his brother outside, and Ophelia had constantly been trying to like get him to tell her more, but he just refused the entire time. But he ends up dead, and he's like gouged out his eyes, he's ripped up his arm, and at this point I was like, oh, are we gonna get like parasites? Was he trying to claw out parasites? Which, by the end of the book, yeah, I called it. There were space parasite things. But yeah, he has like weird black glue dripping from his ears, and Ophelia and Severin are kind of exploring his body and like trying to find out what happened to him, and they have no clue. But yeah, Birch the bitch dies, thank God. And yeah, that's one crew member down, the rest to go. But the thing is, the itching that Birch had, Ophelia was also feeling. Like, she also had this weird itch, so then she starts worrying, and on top of the hallucinations that she's been having about her dad, they get stronger, and she's very much just like, what the hell is happening? Is what happened to Birch going to happen? So she starts to suspect that there's something to do with the aliens that's affecting them. So she's trying to get these samples from people, and no one really wants to give her a sample, because they all start to mistrust her. And yeah, next to go crazy is Lana, and she becomes like super strong, and they have to kind of fight her to get her down and try and tie her down. And she is just like super strong, and she's super crazy, and she's saying things. She's saying, oh, get them out of me, get them out of me. And she's got this same itch that Birch had. And then that is when it's confirmed that there is something within inside them, and this black goo is alien, and it is in all of them. And they are like, oh shit. The black goo they'd also got kind of black goo samples from the alien side, so they start to think, oh, maybe the alien side, we should just give it back the goo, and maybe it'll leave us alone. And I'm like, it's not sentient, like it's literally just pillars, like. But yeah, even recounting this book, I'm getting bored. But basically, to sum it up, they believe, they kind of come to the same conclusion I did, that the black goo is kind of parasites, alien parasites that wiped out the previous team, and they confirm this when they decide to take all the samples that they had taken from the ancient alien sites back to the sites, because they believe that if they take it back, maybe bad things will stop happening. Maybe the aliens just want their goo back. So they take it all back. Liana ends up getting sucked to the tower and dies. Suresh is like paralyzed, he's injured, and they have to rush back to the base, and it was pointless. Taking the samples back to the base was pointless. Kate kind of goes crazy. They find out Ophelia's past and believe that maybe she's the one that's been doing all this since her father was murdered. They start to villainize her as well, so they lock her up. She has to kind of break a seal in the walls, kind of get all the air sucked out so the door opens, and it all starts to happen in the last 50 pages, and it's kind of going crazy, and I loved it. And Kate is going like really annoying. Kate just starts fighting Ophelia, so yeah, it kind of kicks off in the end. But yeah, I'm already bored about talking about this book as I was reading it, so I hope that went well. So finishing this book, I had a few unanswered questions, and I have them here. So one, like, what was with all the dead aliens piled up in the tower? Were they just drained and stored? If so, why was the same thing not done for the Pinnacle team? Because we found out the Pinnacle team that was there before us, that was supposed to be in this base but had gone missing, and one of them was the dead body under the ice. We find them all kind of like dead and strewn about outside the ancient ruins with some of their tech. And I'm like, if the goo killed all the aliens and then stacked them all up, why didn't it do the same for their bodies? It didn't really make sense. It felt a bit inconsistent. Then my next question was, what was with the tooth? Like, I know it was a personal item left behind, and it was kind of to indicate like, why are these personal items being left behind? But it was just on the floor and not in someone's mouth, so it was just a random tooth. My third question was, what was the actual motivation of the goo? Like, it's never really given sentience. It's just kind of a goo that kind of infects people and kind of kills them and drains them. I don't know what it drains them of. Well, life, obviously, because it kind of kills them. But it's just kind of this goo that just kills people for no reason. And it kind of felt very anticlimactic when we were building up this kind of mysterious thing, especially with Ava on the side as well. To just kind of have a mindless goo that just kind of made people itchy and then eventually killed themselves. It was very anticlimactic. But there was no motivation behind the glue. And at the end, it starts to talk through Kate. Oh, I forgot about that. It starts to talk through Kate about being hungry and not minding if they escaped, as it could spread. But that felt so basic. For the first sentient alien life that they'd found in the galaxy for so long, I thought it would be more than just wanting to infect people and eat memories. Okay, so I actually had forgot about that. So I guess it did talk, and it did have some sentience to it. I completely forgot about that. Shows how much this book stuck with me. Then my fourth question was, the ending was so abrupt with the... Oh, yeah, the ending was so abrupt because basically they'd cryosleep themselves because they escaped the planet, but they knew they couldn't spread the goo to anyone else, so they were kind of just like, we're gonna hope for the best. And they wake up 11 years later with they just got a cure now for this weird goo. Like, what? And that's it. No other issues occurred. They were just cured and they're fine. We found out the uncle of Ophelia, who was like the mega corporate guy, who had built Menacing Company, was defeated off screen. He was like they uncovered what he was doing, and that he'd actually wanted to bring the goo back or whatever, similar to the plot of Alien, and he was fired off screen, which was kind of boring, and we barely even established him as a threat throughout the book either. So it was kind of anticlimactic in that way. And also the sisters' relationship was really lacking, so when they reconnected at the end, it kind of fell flat, because it was like, oh my god, we're back together, and it's like, yeah, but we never even saw you together in the first place. But anyway, that is Ghost Station. I am bored of talking about this book, as I was bored reading of it, so yeah, sorry about that. I had to include it because I was going to do a video on it anyway. Yeah, that were my thoughts on the book. It was a very anticlimactic ending. It didn't really stick with me. I appreciate that it kept me interested. When I was in Wales for a week, I feel like if it wasn't the only book that I had with me, I probably would have left it as well, but I had to read it and I had to get through it, and it was okay. Anyway, I'm done. They're the books I had to talk about in this video. I really hope you enjoyed this one, particularly if you're going to read any of these. Read Ascension. Oh, and combat codes. I talked about combat codes in this video. Sorry, I kind of took a break between filming this. Read Ascension, read combat codes, try out Chilling Effects, try out The Floating Hotel, try out Ghost Station. Really, none of them were like terrible. None of them I hated. But yeah, the three of them were kind of unmemorable. Combat codes and Ascension were probably my favorite of the two, and the most kind of well-rounded ones, and the ones that stuck with me the most. But yeah, that was the video. I'm so sorry. I really hope you enjoyed and you took something from this video. But yeah, leave a like, comment and subscribe. Tell me your thoughts about these books in the comments below. I'm so sorry that it's taken me so long to talk about these books. This would have been so much better if I'd have just done the video a month like I thought. But anyway, putting it behind us, we're going to do better next year. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Like, comment and subscribe. Bye.